Hi, everyone. This is Charles Hoskinson broadcasting live from warm, sunny Colorado. Always warm, always sunny, sometimes Colorado. So today is February 20th, 2023, and I wanted to make a quick video about a book I get. This is the second time I've gotten a copy, and it's updated. It's from John Green, Age of Voltaire edition, Cardano for the Masses. So not too long ago, John approached us and said, "Hey, I'm writing a book about Cardano," and we had a chance to collaborate a little bit with him. Mostly, he'd ask some questions, and I think Lars did some work with him. And then I think this is a second edition, basically to look at what's being proposed for Voltaire. This is a book that's near and dear and important to the community because it's an onboarding manual, effectively, for what's been done, what's been said. It covers a boatload of things, and so just looking at the table of contents. Chapter 1 covers the beginning. Chapter 2 is what is Cardano. Chapter 3 is proof of stake. Chapter 4 is Shelley. 5 is Gauguin. 6 is Plutus. 7 is Marlowe. 8 is Basho. 9 is Voltaire. And 10 is RealFi. How about that? Actually includes an entire chapter on RealFi. Anyway, he's been chipping away at it for quite some time. In fact, I'll read off the preface. So quoting John's work. I discovered Cardano while researching a college project in 2018. Ever since I asked a question of Cardano co-founder Charles Hoskinson, one of his AMAs, I had intended to write a book of some sort. I tried different ideas, gave up and returned several times. On hearing the much anticipated Mastering Cardano book would be delayed, I felt there might be a space for a can opener in the meantime. Writing about cryptocurrencies is challenging. Most of the best-selling crypto books have flesh-esque reading scores in the 50s. I wanted a book to be more inclusive. With so much jargon in the blockchain space, I decided to arm the reader with explainers throughout. However, I didn't want to obstruct the flow either, as Kindle automatically converts footnotes to a pop-up format. Explainers are accessible by clicking on superscripts in the text. The explainers form a glossary at the end of the book. I added excerpts from Charles Hoskinson's various updates to interweave his perspective throughout the book. I felt they just add context to many technology decisions while planting a vision for the overall project and industry. I made every effort to be accurate. However, Cardano is evolving rapidly. There has probably been a change or update of some sort as you read this. I intend to update the book regularly in cadence with Cardano updates, improving readability with each edition. For e-readers, graphics are best viewed in landscape mode. I really do appreciate how hard John's worked on this. By the way, this is his own project. He just woke up one day and said, "You know what? Cardano needs a manual, so I'm going to go do that." And we were supposed to get around to it with Mastering Cardano. And what happened was that we found a good professor to work on that, and then he got cancer and unfortunately wasn't able to finish it. And so we were always going to get around to it. But I said, let's wait for the protocol to stabilize to 1.0, and then we can come back to it and write basically a manual. So in the meantime, John did the Lord's work and actually wrote something like this. It's pretty impressive. So I highly recommend you all pick up a copy. And actually, as you read through it, keep reading notes. And what would be super helpful is for you to email John those notes and let him know if you find anything that's a mistake or something you don't understand, something that you're having trouble working your way through. And I do believe that this is kind of a community collaborative project. It's incumbent upon all of us to make sure that we get this where we need to go. Everything from maybe improving the cover art to going chapter by chapter and trying to find ways to get it to a point where this can be something that is basically considered to be the Bible of Cardano. It's always amazing to see how well when people are sufficiently motivated, they do to write and do things. It's been 7 years being at the helm here and building stuff and getting things done. It hasn't been easy. Been through a lot of boom and bust cycles. Been through a lot of market collapses. Been through lots of turnover. Been through pretty much everything you could imagine. And every step of the way, what's reinvigorated and gotten us to the next level has been a persistent, tireless effort from the community to keep things coming along. And every time we've opened a new capability up, whether it be metadata or opening up things like Mary, which gave us NFTs, or opening up Goguen with extended UTXO. It's really been astounding to see how quickly the community's been able to create a new feature or functionality or build something interesting. Like Bitcoin before it, it hasn't always been easy. In fact, in many cases, it takes quite a bit of time to figure out how to do something because a lot of things are new. The staking model was new. The extended UTXO model is new. The way we issue assets are new. Plutus is a new language. Marlowe is a new language. And every single time you bring a new feature out, it does take quite a bit of effort for you guys to figure out how to use it. But when you do, almost always you come up with something novel, creative, and exciting. So thank you for that. And this book, like all the things we do, is really important that we just keep working at it, chipping away at it. It's good to hear, a lot of things to come, a lot of debates to come, and they're going to be challenging and difficult. I wish that I could promise you smooth sailing ahead, but unfortunately, the problem is that now the time has come to leave the warm embrace and cradle of the next item on the roadmap and when this and when that, to understanding that almost everything is going to now be a community debate. I was just recently asked when input endorsers. I have no say over that. It's one of many candidate designs we released last year, a good protocol sketch and some ideas of how it's going to work. We're writing right now aggressively a really deep and detailed theoretical paper that'll explain the security harness behind it. But at the end of the day, it'll be broken down into some SIPs, and the community is going to decide that. And there's dozens more things that are quite like that along those lines. Genesis, peer-to-peer, extended UTXO HD, and SIP 1694 are the last four roadmap items under the original setup of things. And those are coming this year. So anything beyond that really is up to you guys about where to go here or there. And I hope that we can build the right governance tools, the right places to have dialogue in order to facilitate conversations that converge to clarity. It's hard, and not everybody's going to see eye to eye. Not everybody's going to be fair in communication, and not everybody's going to treat each other with respect and dignity, and not everybody's going to respect the contributions people have made. And that's just what the internet's all about. And if we have any hope of achieving great things, on par with the things that we've achieved before, we're just going to have to find ways to communicate productively and effectively. So the age of Voltaire really is the hardest part of the roadmap, and it's the one with the least certainty. And we certainly have a lot of great ideas, as do many of you, about the things that need to be done and said. And I really, really hope that those ideas can see the light. Next week, there's a workshop here in Colorado. Some of you are actually coming to the office to meet with me and other engineers and to have a deep and detailed conversation about the nuances of 1694. It's kind of a conversation opener above and beyond the SIP. And the hope is that a lot of people in the community can give some great feedback on things that they've thought about now that there's been ample time for review. Based upon that conversation, if it looks positive, it's just one gate condition for many conditions to come before that ends up in the protocol in some form or another. Once that's there, it'll probably be rolled out the same way that the ITN was rolled out and Plutus was rolled out, where there were pioneer programs. So many of you in the stake pool community remember being incentivized testnet staking pioneers, and you had pioneer pools. Well, I think we can do the same thing as a community with DREPs. One of the advantages of the DREPs is that they help filter and manage the maelstrom of chaotic opinions, and they have a direct relationship with their constituents. So it's a much more manageable set of people to have discussions with that is a good representative sample of the opinion set of the ecosystem. There's now, at this juncture, a very diverse set of people. I often said, and I think it might even be quoted in John's book, that the community's grown up when there's plenty of people floating around that despise me or don't like me, but like Cardano. And with the contingent staking debate, we've certainly seen a few of them. And certainly tomorrow with the Twitter space, we'll probably see more. So that's a good thing. And diversity of opinion is a good thing. And to make that opinion actionable, that's the point of the DREP system, because it gives people the ability to delegate their voice to either themselves or to those that they feel reflect their opinion. And that large maelstrom of DREPs will allow the conversation to get to the next level and hopefully allow the ecosystem to stabilize around a coherent roadmap. The MBO is another essential pillar of governance in that it allows us to have fact-based conversations and achieve objective reality. One of the biggest problems with modern democracies is that people don't actually talk to each other. They talk at each other and talk past each other. And oftentimes debates devolve into name-calling, personal attacks, and frankly, misrepresentations of what people are trying to accomplish. The point of institutions is they allow you to objectively assess reality and filter the complexity down to an executive summary of what are people actually talking about. And they also allow you to, through a principles-based approach, come up with some proposed agendas about where to go and what to do. Cardano, as I built it and wrote in why Cardano, was intended to be a financial operating system for those who didn't have one, which basically meant entire economies could run on it. And that's why we went, my company, to Africa and spent years of our lives in the trenches, in war zones, in some of the poorest countries in the world, in some of the most difficult jurisdictions to operate in, and tried as hard as we could to drive business adoption and learn what the needs are there so we could give economic identity to those who didn't have it. And it was our belief that Cardano as a protocol would be well suited if it evolved in the right direction to accommodate and meet the needs of those people. At the end of the day, it's the decision of the community as a whole whether they want the protocol to evolve in that direction or evolve in a different direction. It's not my decision. I just wrote down my aspirations and hopes, and now that there are 3 million people floating around, it's ultimately your choice and decision where you want to go and what you want to do. I hope the protocol is useful for the things that I've done, or else the last 4 or 5 years of my life would be very frustrated, and we'll see. But again, it's not my call, and my hope is that you're at least informed enough to know what the option space is, and that's why books like these are so important, because they're written by the community for the community and gets everybody up to the same speed and same page. Point of the DREP system and things like the MBO is it at least allows people to start converging to objective facts, fact-based reality. Another thing is we never wrote a constitution, and that's my fault. I should have done it at the very beginning. I just didn't have the time and the bandwidth or the expertise necessary to opine on fundamental human rights. To be fair, the United States of America didn't do it that way either. We had the original Confederacy that we were founded under, the Articles of Confederacy, and that failed. And so we decided that we needed to get a do-over, and we wrote the Constitution in response to the ineffectiveness of the first American government. Ratified by the 13 colonies, it became the bedrock of the United States, but it took over 200 years, and some would argue, and me too, that there's still a lot more work to be done because we have an imperfect union, and perhaps some dates need to be done because the founding document didn't accommodate for some of the bugs and hacks that people have taken advantage of to co-opt our government. Similarly, we do have to have a fundamental discussion about what does it mean, the Cardano protocol, and what are the rights implicit and explicit. And that is my hope in the age of Voltaire, that we can converge to that. I do not believe it can be finished until such a time that we have SIP 1694 and we have the MBO done. I think we can have lots of draft copies and candidate copies, and there's going to be a lot of fights to come. And ultimately, you're all going to decide what holding ADA means to you. And that'll be codified in some way that hopefully is protocol understandable. But there are a lot of moving pieces to all of this, and this is a lifelong endeavor, and no one has created a perfect government. And it would be hubristic of us to assume that we would be able to do so quickly. Rather, I just aspire to create a process where every day we leave what we find in a better state than when we found it. If we can achieve that, then one day I do believe we can build a shining city on a hill. I do believe that we can actually build something that is the envy of all, but it's going to take time and effort, and many have signed up for that. I worry at times about what the last century has done to our ability to have constructive discourse with each other. We are not immune to the broader tides that have been enabled, for lack of a better term, that have been imbued to divide us for power. How we talk to each other, how we debate each other, how we approach problem solving, argumentation. Unfortunately, these skill sets, these dignities, the integrity of the process has badly devolved. We see conspiracies everywhere. Benefit of the doubt is an absent thing. And oftentimes we are unable to even represent the people who oppose us in a fair light, trying our best to understand why they say and do the things they do. And we believe that if we don't win, or our side doesn't win, then evil has prevailed, as opposed to just simply a difference of opinion. It's unrealistic to assume that somehow, some way, we natively would be different. You have to try to be different. You have to have systems, processes, procedures, checks and balances, and a methodology to be different. And in the absence of these things, we will be no better than those we seek to replace. It's just that simple. So you can look at it the way you want to. Some people ascribe greed. Some people say it's rational ignorance. Some people say that it's just human nature. I like to believe, and I think cryptocurrencies require this, that we can be better and we can aspire to higher pursuits. And in the absence of that, we can at least align incentives in a way where people tend to converge to better outcomes than where they started. So that's really the great experiment of Voltaire. It was an irony that I named it after Voltaire, because he was a harsh critic of democracy and felt that democratic processes tend to devolve to mob rule, to delusions of masses, and to demagoguery. And he was actually a big fan of the enlightened monarchy. And so my hope was that we could prove him wrong, or at the very least replicate his understanding of the matter at hand and perhaps find a way to get out of it. It was a tongue-in-cheek reference, and I'm glad that we're doing it together. It's been a long 7 years, and there have been a lot of ups and downs. Last year was probably the most frustrating of my career, including 2014, when my time at Ethereum was abruptly ended. The reason being is that I felt at the beginning of 2022 that we as an industry had a real chance to achieve a level of legitimacy and a permanent seat at the political table. We almost got there, and it was unceremoniously undone by the failings of centralized entities and dishonest actors. Do Kwon and Sam Bankman-Fried, in a blink of an eye, did more damage to our industry, the perception of it, and our ability to navigate the political process than every other bad actor combined. They have yet to truly apologize or show remorse, and even if they did so, the damage is done, the trust is broken, and it will take years, if not decades, to fully realize the damage that they've done. First, to the primary wave of victims who have lost their life savings as a result of their actions, but then the secondary implications, where politicians who already didn't like crypto are now using this as a crisis of opportunity, like Rahm Emanuel, let no crisis go to waste, to co-opt the industry and subjugate it to the whims and wills of other industries, to all of our detriment. I felt a big chunk of my life's work and the life's work of others like Vitalik and Adam Back and all the other people who work really hard at trying to make this industry great, slip away a little bit. And I felt a little bit of hopelessness myself. But you know what? We picked up the pieces, and 2023 is a reset. It's a new year, and it's another opportunity for us to dust ourselves off and get back to the labor of trying really hard to represent the industry well. There will likely be more congressional hearings. There'll likely be more Senate hearings. There'll likely be more opportunities for us to try as hard as we can to say that we deserve a seat at the table and that we have good plans for the future, despite the fact that bad actors have caused a lot of damage. Look at the misrepresentations that are being said about the industry. People are saying because of the FTX failure, crypto has failed. Yet FTX was a centralized entity led by a dishonest actor who relied on a lack of transparency, oversight, and predictable rules in order to be able to defraud millions of people. Had everything been done with dApps and DeFi and cryptocurrencies, ironically, it would have been impossible for SBF to do what he did. Yet, we have so many politicians and regulators now pointing to it as an example of why crypto should not exist, despite the fact that crypto is the solution. This misrepresentation and misunderstanding is unfortunate and unfair. But we have no right as an industry to criticize that misrepresentation if we're doing it ourselves in our own debates, in our own lives. Politics, after all, is just merely a reflection of us and who we are. And our politicians, by definition, can be no better than us. We put them in power, they reflect us, and they serve at our will, even if we like to say that they don't. They would not say or do the things they do if we didn't hold them accountable for those things. It's just that simple. And that's where we're at. So my hope in the age of Voltaire is that we are able to converge to a better state and show people how to debate, show people how to make decisions, show people how to arrive at principles. And you know what? There's going to be a lot of hiccups along the way, a lot of very unreasonable people along the way, a lot of misrepresentations along the way. But, we're just have to get it done. It was the last part of the roadmap for a reason, because it was the hardest part. I saved the best for last, and we'll just see where we get. For what it's worth, it's been a hell of a ride, and we've all endured a lot together. And it would be a real shame for the ride to come to an end with an ultimate failure, and for all the things we have achieved to be subjugated as a footnote in history as we move to a world of CBDCs, permission systems, and ultimately the few in charge of the many. For too much of human history, we've lived in that reality, and we've accepted it as just the way things are. And every now and then, there's a revolution. Every now and then, there's a crazy group of people who think we can do things differently, whether it be the French Revolution or the American Revolution, the Athenian democracy, or every other ragtag anarchist in between that had a better idea. But all too often, cynicism kicked in. All too often, the founders behind those movements retired, died, or got co-opted, and the replacements didn't live up to the virtues. What made cryptocurrencies so special is it replaced don't be evil with can't be evil. And what makes cryptocurrencies so special is, for the first time in any of our lives, we really do have a chance to redefine how everything works if only we think carefully about it. This does not mean a libertarian utopia where each and every person has absolute freedom in every regard and respect, because after all, we're human. And by living our lives this way, in absolute freedom in every respect, those actions will inevitably harm others. If you don't believe me, live downstream of a rancher who decides every day it's a good idea to pour toxic chemicals into the river that crosses your land and poisons your cattle. Obviously, you'd say that's a problem, but he doesn't feel it. It's not his water, goes downstream, doesn't poison his cattle, poisons yours. You see, and that's the problem. So you need to live in a society of rules and agreements, a society of basic rights, non-aggression, and some respect that there are greater concerns at times than the individual. The point of cryptocurrencies, the point of blockchain technology, is in some way to give us more nuanced tools to ensure that whenever we go from the individual to the collective, that things will not be abused, co-opted, corrupted, or misused for the good of the few against the many. Every time we've been told we need to sacrifice some of our liberty, some of our power, some of our autonomy for the greater good, almost always we've resigned ourselves to accept some notion of corruption, some small failure of agency, just the human way of doing things. I'd like to believe that what we are trying to do in the cryptocurrency space is to have a new option where we don't pay that price, or at the very least, we have new mechanisms to minimize it. And we will see this with Cardano. Many decisions have to be made in the coming months and years that will change the way that we use these systems. Some are out of technological necessity. If you want things instantly better, faster, cheaper to work on your cell phone, you're in some way going to have to trust something. It could be a centralized actor. It could be a new cryptographic primitive. It could be a federated group of actors. Everybody does this already with Ethereum. It's called OpenSea. It's called Infura. So we can aspire to be better, and in many cases, we can write protocols that move the trade-off profile, but with convenience, lower operating costs, accessibility. You're probably going to, at the end of the rainbow, trust something, as opposed to live in a completely trustless world. Now, you can live in a completely trustless world. We call that Daedalus. There are trade-offs with it. With Mithril, we can make them better, but you can never completely make them go away, especially as the system grows in capabilities and functionality. You will see many arguments in the coming months and years about slippery slope, saying if we do this or do that, maybe somebody can do that. Many cases, these are fundamental misunderstandings about the things we've already decided on. For example, if you're making a slippery slope argument about implementing a particular feature, it may be the case that you're not fully understanding the expressiveness that Cardano already has. Plutus and extended UTXO can be used to implement almost any regulatory regime on Cardano. And if your argument is that such a regime being implemented, the mere existence of it will somehow compel the regulator to mandate the use of it across everybody, well, the reality is Plutus already gives people the ability to do that. This was actually one of the reasons why the Bitcoin core developers never pushed for increasing the level of expressiveness of Bitcoin script. You see, if Bitcoin could be programmed to do something, the concern was that maybe people would compel it to do something. They kept it minimalist. They reduced the feature surface. Keep away those dirty user-issued assets. Keep away those dApps and DeFi. They're a distraction from being the world reserve currency, the store of value, the digital gold, the payment system that we all aspired to have. Everything else shouldn't be done. So you have to truly understand that there's a difference between can and will, and there's also systems protect you from will. You see, compulsory regulation, if we've designed the governance system correctly, has to be decided by you, not me, not a government. The US government, the Russian government, the Chinese government has absolutely no say in what happens to Cardano today. And if we build 1694 the right way, this is a topic of the workshop, then they never will have a say. Ultimately, only you do. That's the way it should be. And you have to decide what compromises to make, what systems to build, what's free, fair, and reasonable for each and every person. It's not my call. Just got it started. Just push the boulder down the hill. Gravity is going to do the rest. And that is how you protect yourself from could being transformed into will or shall. Now, I don't have all the answers. None of us do. You don't either. The other side of this whole debate is that we have to be honest when things weren't done well the first time and change them. For example, I mentioned in a prior video about the level of expressiveness of our scripting language. Many in the smart contract space want Cardano to do more at the base layer. This is another big debate. Should we introduce non-determinism? I don't know. My core developers in my company sure as hell don't want to do that. A lot of you dApp developers do, and respect the time and other such things, because it would make your life a lot easier. Maybe we should reserve that to layer 2. Maybe we should reserve that to a side chain. It's a hard argument decision, and difficult trade-offs have to be decided. The same for input endorsers, which fundamentally changes every aspect of consensus in Cardano. The number of stake pool operators, the reward mechanism, the things that happen on-chain and off-chain, and how they reconcile with each other. There are clear, huge benefits in that the throughput of the system would increase exponentially, but there are potential downsides that need to be carefully thought and discussed, and things that have to be reasoned through and understood, as well as potential security risks that have to be carefully thought through to make sure they're not as problematic as people would believe. The same for introducing a pub subsystem at the layer 1 versus layer 2. Nothing in life is free. So again, we have to have the humility to admit that maybe we don't know the things we don't know, to admit the things that perhaps we have strong opinions on are a lot more nuanced and complicated than we'd like to believe. And we have to accept that some cases it takes years, sometimes decades, for things to be finally sorted to an extent where it's usable. But remember something, we are building infrastructure for humanity at humanity's scale for human lifetimes. The work is never done, the systems are never finished, and the use cases continue to evolve and extend themselves. And that's what makes it fun, worthwhile, and meaningful. And if we succeed, we change the world for everybody, just like ChatGPT is, just like the iPhone did, just like the internet did. This is just as meaningful of an invention for everyone. And we have to be careful about that, cognizant of that, and all be stewards of that. Tomorrow is going to be a fun debate, hopefully a respectful one, but it's just a small blip in the thousands to come. You, the community, will build many tools, opine on many things. Some will be honest, some will be dishonest. It's just how discourse works. As we get closer to building an MBO, more good things will come out, more people will participate, and my hope is that we can see a testnet soon for SIP 1694, which will allow DREP pioneers and for people to begin effectively running for office and becoming the government of Cardano. Then the hundreds of DREPs, if not thousands, can regularly meet and talk and form agendas and debates, and you'll see an escalation of conversation. If we have good foundations, those conversations will be honest, high integrity, productive, constructive, fact-based, and objective. If we have the wrong foundations, those conversations will be cesspits of demagoguery. I suspect we'll have a little bit in between. And every day, my hope is we move a little bit more to the former instead of the latter. And we'll see. In the meantime, what you can do is help John out. Read Cardano for the masses, comment on it, opine on it yourself, and get yourself educated. There's a lot of stuff to do. There's a lot of stuff to read and think about. This is not a small topic. Cardano is life. It's the financial operating system, I hope, for those who don't have it, and ultimately the thing that returns agency back to your humanity. So, thank you all for listening, and I'll see you guys tomorrow. Cheers.